Good evening, everybody. um, I was hoping that the last comment I had would be the last I'd have to on the subject, but apparently not, because I went back and watched a video in which me and this this Turkish Neanderthal went a few rounds, and after I left, I went and had a barbecue with my friends, and then I come back and watched it, and as soon as I got off, he said I was probably going someplace to get fucked up the ass. Now, this is not merely slanderous, but it's absolutely incorrect. And for him to even imply this is dim-witted. But what he does claim to be is a Muslim, and he's trying to paint me with a brush that whatever activities any gay has ever engaged in, that I must also be engaged in those, whether they, on any level. It just isn't the case. And what anybody else decides to do sexually is their business and not his business. But the other day there was a young, I don't know if he was Turkish or what, he was Oriental, was saying that he was giving his coming out story. And I commented on it that it's nice, that he had the guts to do it, and that it's terrific as YouTube, so many people can see how many other young kids there are, and how many kids that are troubled because of bullying, the type of which this asshole would participate in on a high level, and that I basically knew that I was gay at 8 years old, and that I just regretted that there wasn't something like YouTube when I was young. But he continued to paint me. He went to that site. I don't know how he found it, unless it was a setup. And then last night there was some woman tried to Skype me and wanted to put on a sex show for me, and I sort of think that maybe somebody had sent her to the site, because I've been on Skype for years and no one's ever proposed such a thing before. But aside from that, I think he's been trolling me. But for him to go on this kid's site and make a comment about me didn't help that boy out a bit, and didn't help anybody else out that kid was helping. And it was a low life, rotten approach. If he had something to say to me, he should have waited till he got on a goddamn chat and had the balls to say it then. But let us investigate this. Of all things, he claims he is first a Muslim. Well, then I must ask him, as a Muslim, are you going to, if you have a daughter, will you see that her genitals are mutilated? Because it happens hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times a year, that they feel that in the best interest of the girl, they cut her clitoris out. So will you cut your daughter's clitoris out, or will you have some Eamon or some other torturous fool in the name of Allah come and cut your daughter's clitoris out? And what about if you decide to go back to Turkey, and she decides that she wants to go to school or something, or you go to another country where Sharia law is, and some crazy nut Muslim decides to blow your daughter's school up with your daughter in it, because they don't feel that the girl should be educated. Half the Muslims in the world are women, and no religion has ever done more to keep women down than has Islam, in the name of Allah. Now, how about marriage? Sometimes they marry them off at 10 or 12 years. Would you be happy if you had a daughter in the name of Allah, to marry her, have her married at 12 years old? Or maybe in the sex slave trade of young boys and young girls. No one commits more of these crimes than countries that are supposedly Islamic states. No one commits slave crimes as often as Islamic states. Now, do we want to take a chance of having Sharia law? Already in parts of the United States where there are sections where there are a good deal of Muslims in their little enclaves, they want to introduce Sharia law. One of the biggest problems in the world today is the invasion of Europe by Muslims and their attempt to bring Sharia law with them. You look at almost any hotspot in the world today, and there's a good chance that it's been perpetrated by Muslims. Even the Chinese, and whether or not we like the Chinese or not, the acts of terror against the Chinese are by the Uyghurs, which are a tribe of Muslims that live in southwestern China and perpetrate terrorism all over China because they want their independence so they can have a Sharia state. The problems in the Middle East, most of them, if they aren't just outright Muslim against the rest of the world, they're Muslim against Muslim. They're Sunni against Shia. The practice, if you're a Muslim and you leave to convert to some other religion, that's a death sentence. You can be put to death for that. This is a bunch of loonies out there that are trying to institute the Muslim mannerisms and way of life on the rest of us. Now, what they have done, they've destroyed great arts of work. The world's largest standing Buddha was blown up by Muslims. What the fuck businesses are theirs if there's a statue of Buddha? It's not a statue of Muhammad or any other icon that the fucking Muslims believe. But they thought they had a right to blow up the 500-year-old standing Buddha. There's just there's no end to this nonsense. And tell me, if your daughter went out and somehow you thought that she had insulted the family, are you going to kill her? That's common practice in many Muslim countries, honor killings. Is this the kind of bullshit you try to paint me with assuming all things that gay people have perpetrated, and because they happen to have been gay and perpetrated these things, you try to dump on me? And maybe you ought to start assuming some responsibility for what the Muslims have dumped on the rest of the world.